Good afternoon. My name is Anna Fletcher. I'm the Executive Director of the Energy and Mineral Law Foundation. Thank you for joining us today. Let me first say, what is the Energy and Mineral Law Foundation? We are a nonprofit. We've been around since the early 1980s, and we provide continuing legal education and scholarship in the areas of energy law. So we initially started out focusing primarily on mineral law, a lot of coal, and then we've expanded over the years to include oil and gas, and then most recently to include sources of renewable energy as well. So we also have a strong mission to provide outreach to law students in law schools. The Careers in Energy panel being just a piece of that. We also provide academic scholarships to the tune of about $30,000 each year. The application is typically available around the first of the year on our website. And then additionally, we also have an exciting program called the Schetroma, the Schetroma Travel Grant Fund. And that fund was bequeathed by a former member of the organization who passed away. And he specified that it should be used for travel by law students to the Annual Institute. And so through that fund, we're able to provide all the travel expenses and lodging expenses for any law students who are interested in attending the Annual Institute. This year's Annual Institute, the 43rd Annual Institute, will be in Amelia Island, Florida. So it's definitely something to look into for this coming year, June 12th through 14th, 2022. We'll be in Florida, and we hope you can join us. So keep your eyes peeled for our website, which is emlf.org, and follow us on social media, where we'll post the applications when they're available. Like I said, I'm the Executive Director of the Energy and Mineral Law Foundation. I've been in this role for almost 4 years now, since 2018. Prior to that, I spent 7 or 8 years working for the Commonwealth of Kentucky in its Energy and Environment Cabinet, which covers the areas of natural resources, coal, oil, and gas, mine permitting and reclamation, as well as environmental protection, so water, air, waste management. And also I was the primary counsel for the conservation agencies and the Nature Preserves Commission and Heritage Land Fund. Prior to that, I clerked for a state court judge in Kentucky. And it was in what is our largest circuit in Kentucky in terms of volume of cases, because it's where you go to sue the state government. So we saw a lot of administrative law, a lot of cases against the government there. And prior to that, I was a student at the University of Kentucky Law School. So let me turn it over to, let's see, I'll just go around my screen, and I'll start with Luke. Luke Liben is a partner at Reed Smith in Pittsburgh, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Sure, thanks, Anna. So like Anna said, my name is Luke Liben. I am a partner at Reed Smith. I've been at Reed Smith my entire career. I graduated from Georgetown for law school in 2010. I went to Pitt for undergrad, graduated there in 2007. My practice, which I guess we should talk about briefly, right, Anna? So I am a very traditional oil and gas litigator. I represent exploration and production and midstream companies. So companies that drill for and develop natural gas, and then companies that move natural gas. I work primarily in the Marcellus and the Utica, but we also handle, we just finished a case in the Bakken for one of our clients. And we will litigate any and all claims that our clients will let us litigate on their behalf. But most of my practice involves various types of landowner disputes, a lot of royalty claims, a lot of lease-based claims, and then we also do some work when some of our clients get into conflicts within the industry with contractors or other situations like that. And that is what I do and have done for the last 11 years at this point.
Let me turn it over to Whitney Kerns. Whitney is a partner at Bowles Rice in Charleston. Whitney, if you want to tell us a little bit about your job and your career path.
All right, well, I am somewhat similar. I'm a partner at Bowles Rice in Morgantown, West Virginia, and I've been there my whole career as well. I started there right out of law school, and I've been there, let's see, I started in 2011, so like 10 years. Um, I went to WVU for undergrad and for law school, and then just, ended up hanging around here in Morgantown. I do oil and gas litigation, and then I also do oil and gas transactional work. A lot of the similar litigation that Luke mentioned, lease disputes, landowner disputes, royalty disputes, things like that. On the transactional side, a lot of what they call due diligence work, where when there's going to be an exchange of mineral property, we examine the title, see who owns what, make sure the company that's selling their interest own what they say they own, to make sure that what's being exchanged, that all the interests are there and everything that adds up and everything's good to go. I still do a good bit of coal work too, in addition to oil and gas work. I do litigation involving coal companies, and I do transactional work for them also. We do a lot of stuff with making sure our clients are in compliance with the Surface Mining and Reclamation Act, with SMACRA. A lot of permitting work, making sure that they have everything they need for permitting from the West Virginia DEP in order to mine and things like that. And our firm is also starting to try to get into some of the renewable energy market as well, with some of the solar stuff. I haven't had an opportunity to do much of that work yet, but that is something that I'm definitely looking to kind of inch my way in on as we take on more of that work within the firm.
Interesting. Clayton, let me turn it over to you. Clayton's an associate at Dinsmore and Shohl, and you're in Charleston, right? Sorry about that, Whitney. I thought you were in Charleston as well.
Oh, no, that's totally fine. I'm originally from Charleston, and everybody that works for Bowles Rice still likes to say I'm from Charleston, and those people still think I work there, even though I have never had an office down there, but they still claim me down there too.
So yeah, like Anna mentioned, my name is Clayton Harkins. I'm a fourth year associate now at Dinsmore and Shohl in the Charleston office. I'm in the commercial litigation practice group. Probably 85% of my practice is just general commercial litigation. How that ends up relating to the energy space is, coal companies primarily, but some oil and gas, some utilities, and really not necessarily energy related litigation, but the opposite side of it. So L&E contract disputes, those kind of other areas that you don't typically think about whenever you think, oh, I'm going to be an energy attorney. The other large portion of my work is related to the Public Service Commission and the regulatory issues there. Here in West Virginia, primarily in the waste management space, but again, branching out some to electric utilities, water utilities. I've done a very, very small amount of wind work in the renewable space. It's just not something that I think our firm, at least in the Charleston office, does a whole lot of. I've done a little bit there. And then the last little portion of my work is criminal defense. I handle CJA cases for the Southern District of West Virginia, usually a handful of cases a year, which are pretty interesting and get you in front of the judges and stuff. I'm originally from Texas, so I went to Texas A&M for my undergrad, and then WVU for law school. And then as the story goes, met a girl, got convinced to stick around, and now we have a 8-month-old and 2 dogs in a house, and it seems like I'm going to be here for a while.
And I should also mention that Alexandria Lay, who's a partner at Steptoe and Johnson in West Virginia, wasn't able to join us today. And so let me ask you guys a question that I didn't tell you I was going to ask you, but I think kind of ties into your kind of career path discussion. So my undergraduate degree is in arts administration with an emphasis in theater. So certainly it seems a pretty far piece away from energy law. And so I guess my question kind of is this what you thought you were going to do, in college and law school? Is this where you thought you would be you know, 10 years out of law school. And let me start with Whitney.
Well, I was a poli sci major in undergrad, and I kind of knew I was going to go to law school, so I had no plans to be a politician or anything like that. So that was just kind of a means to an end. When I was in law school, the energy law, a lot of my practice is based primarily in property law. That's what I always say. I'm first and foremost a property attorney. But when I was in law school, the one class I had Dean Fisher, and the one thing that I said that I would never, ever, ever, ever do was property law. So this was definitely not where I saw myself. I thought property law was tough. Dean Fisher was tough. He was a great professor, but he was tough, and I had a hard time with it. When I got out into practice, though, it was just kind of how the stars aligned, and it has ended up working out perfectly, because I think one of the great things about this practice is that it's very flexible. And I have a couple of kids, and I like to be able to be there for them and be at school functions and be home with them when they need to be home and things like that. And that's the one nice thing about this particular career path, is there is a lot of flexibility, I feel like, attached with it, but not necessarily where I saw myself when I was in law school, but very happy that it's where I ended up.
Clayton, let me ask you the same question.
Yeah, so similar to Whitney, I was a history major, and it was sort of a means to an end. I always planned to go to law school. There was really no other. I didn't consider any other options. That was just kind of what I planned to do. So I went straight from undergrad to law school, and straight from law school into practice. So kind of as fast of a track as you can get, I think, to getting here.
I was just telling my husband the other day, I think I ran away from law school for a couple of years before I finally resigned myself. I had in the back of my head I wanted to go, and I thought, no, maybe I'll get my MBA, maybe I'll get my master's in teaching. And then finally I was like, I want to do it, I got to do it. Luke, what about you?
I wish I could tell you I had a master plan. I feel like I did not. I was a political science and communications major in law school, so definitely a theme there. I think I knew when I went to law school I wanted to be a litigator, more because I didn't really understand what other lawyers did. I still don't really understand what other lawyers do. So I think I knew I wanted to be a litigator. I definitely fell into our field. I did 2 summers at my firm, and one of the many benefits to that was when I started at the firm, I knew a lot of the folks who were a year ahead of me because I had done my first summer with them. One of them was in the oil and gas practice, or what would become our oil and gas practice, and said, hey, this is what I'm doing. I like these people, you should check it out. And 11 years later, here I am, still working, with the very first partner that I was introduced to like that. I've stayed in our practice because I find it really interesting. I do enjoy litigating, but I also think I like working in our industry because it's so topical. I try to read the paper as much as I can and pick up the paper on any day. And it's not turning a page now, but scrolling 2-3 times at most before you're going to find an article that is directly related to what we do. And I like that. I like working in something that is really a big part of kind of literally how the world turns. So that's why I'm still here, but I came to it totally by accident.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely relate. I ended up in this field because the judge that I clerked for was the former cabinet secretary for the environment cabinet for Kentucky, and recommended me head that direction, and I haven't looked back. So let me ask you, what's one big takeaway thing you enjoy about your work? And let me start with Clayton with this one.
Yeah, thing I like the most is probably the people. I really like the folks in my office, not to say that there's not good people at other firms or other areas, but I really enjoy that aspect of it. I'm a bit of a people person, so this past year's been kind of weird not being in the office and things, and being able to talk with your colleagues and meet with your colleagues. And I also think that's a huge part of mentorship and really coming up in your practice, is having someone there hands-on to be able to talk to you and meet with you, and run through someone to ask the quote unquote dumb questions to. So yeah, that's probably what I like most about my practice is really just the folks that I'm working with. And then being in commercial litigation, it's never the same thing. I think it's always something different. It's a little, it's kind of repetitive in that it's contract disputes, it's L&E disputes. There's, several different types of discrimination and things of that nature that from the L&E space. But there's always something different. There's millions of torts that you can sue for, and you kind of see them all. It's never the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let me throw it to you, Whitney.
I love the people that I work with too. I think there's great people in the industry. I think one of the things that's nice about there's kind of an energy law community almost, especially with EMLF, as you start to get more and more involved in the industry and move forward in your career, you end up working with a lot of the same people. There's kind of a network of people that you get to meet, and I think that's a great thing. Like Luke said, it's nice working within an industry, within a field that is always current. It's always changing too. When I started out, kind of the way that I fell into it was because there was the big natural gas kind of boom, and everybody, as they were coming out of law school, were kind of going into this field. And we've been able to see, at that time, our firm was moving from coal into this natural gas, and now we're kind of seeing this move with the solar energy and the renewables, and to kind of see where that's going to go. It just seems like it's always changing. So there's always something new on the horizon, always new ways for your practice to develop, always new things to learn. So it never really feels like it gets too stale or too stagnant in this practice area.
That's a great point. It's very technology heavy field, and there's always new technology and new interesting developments for sure. Luke, let me throw the same question over to you.
Yeah, so I would echo what everybody said. I think off that last point that Whitney made, one of the nice things, I think some people might think, you're just an oil and gas lawyer, that's all you do. And so maybe you lose some of that kind of new topics, with each case that Clayton was talking about a little bit. But there are really all different kinds of, and I can only speak as a litigator, but all different kinds of cases. So we had a case where one of our clients got sued by the company that actually operated the drilling rigs that were drilling on our client's behalf. And so I spent 2.5 years really, really learning how rigs work, which is really hard for a political science major because I am not an engineer. But I got to get really in depth on that. We went out to the rig at that point was in New Mexico. So we went out to New Mexico, see the rig, do an inspection, and really, really learn that. And that kind of stuff is fun to really get. And we took that case all the way through to trial. So you have to really understand what's happening. And that is fun. That kind of stuff is fun. I think in general, as a litigator, everybody likes different stuff. I find it hard to believe, but I have colleagues who tell me I would rather sit in my office and write a brief for 10 hours a day than be in court. And I don't get that, but it's great because maybe if they're going to do it, I don't have to do it because I don't want to do it. So for me, the part of my practice that I enjoy is learning about new things, getting to do stuff like that, and then getting to be on your feet, taking depositions, defending depositions, being in court. And as you progress in your career, obviously you get more and more of those opportunities, but that is the part of the job that I like. That's what I have.
I told somebody the other day that I would rather do any sort of public speaking presentation than do the dishes. They couldn't believe it. So I give a presentation, I pick presentation 10 times out of 10 if the other option was doing the dishes. So let me ask you too, kind of what's your biggest challenge? We talked a lot about right now in the legal profession. Certainly we've come to this realization much later than we probably should have, but there's been a huge focus on stress management and mitigating the effects of kind of secondhand trauma and creating a more livable work-life balance. I joke that I saw that my former law school had a program for its first years about how to combat imposter syndrome. And I think they intentionally gave me imposter syndrome when I was there, but certainly the legal profession is kind of coming around to the importance of protecting our mental health. And so I'm asking, you know, kind of what's your biggest challenge? What do you do to kind of, you know, manage your time and manage your stress and create that, the balance that we're all parents. So, you know, we have a lot of responsibilities pulled in a lot of different directions, and people who aren't parents do as well. Let me start with Whitney on this one, since this is a deep question. Sorry to kick off with you.
Well, so since my practice is part litigation, but also part transactional, on the transactional side of things, one of the things that's nice is that I really can do it at any time and from anywhere. I prefer to be in the office. I like to be around the people that I work with, but you know, to kind of manage work-life balance and things like that, if I need to take an afternoon off, you know, I can do that. It's not a problem. I can then work at night. I can get up early, work first thing in the morning. If there's a day that I need to be someplace away from work, you know, I can make up that time, you know, do what I need to do on a Sunday, take a couple hours on Saturday. The schedule, it allows for a lot of flexibility in that way, that I can take my work anywhere. And for the most part, you know, you have to meet deadlines and things like that. But generally I can create more or less my own schedule. And when I know I have things coming up, or there's things for the kids, or there's, you know, we have a trip coming up, or I know that schools are closed this week at spring break or something like that, I can typically plan ahead and I can plan my work around those things, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. Luke, let me throw it over to you.
So I'll preface this with saying that I'm 1,000% the wrong person to answer this question, but I will do my best. I think there's a couple things. I think, and again, I can't speak to it from a corporate side or anything other than a litigator, but one of the things that I've learned, I haven't learned how to deal with it, but I've learned is that, you know, as a litigator, your work really can come in waves in certain times. So we just basically closed discovery in a massive class action that we're defending. And because this is the way that it works, all of the depositions happened in the last, you know, month and a half. And so we had 4 depositions a week for 6 weeks. And so you got to go to the depots, and then you got to do all the other work in the morning and the night beforehand. And it's really busy, is a shorter way to say that. Learning to have an appreciation of the fact that it's going to be really busy at certain points. And then at some points it's going to fall off, and it's maybe not going to be so busy. And to, when you are not busy, not feel like you need to be busy, right? Keep in mind that you just billed 70 hours a week or whatever it was for the last month and a half. And so if you're a little bit lighter for a little while, that's okay. And see your kids and see your wife and kind of take it easy a little bit, or your spouse or your husband or whoever. And so that's something that I have learned and I'm still trying to implement. It's a lot easier said than done. 2 other things that come to mind. One of them is really practical, and I just did this, but I used to have my work email on my personal phone, and I stopped that, and I had the firm give me a firm phone. So now I have 2 separate phones. And so like yesterday, I took my son to the Pitt game and I left my work phone at home. And in the past, like, you know, I need my phone, it's got our tickets on it. So it also has my work email. And so, you know, we'll be standing there in line and I'm checking my work email. And now I physically cannot do that. Because I left my phone at home, and that's a conscientious effort that I'm trying to make to be a slightly better human being. The last thing I would say is I think as you get more senior in your career, you are responsible for this for yourself, but also for other people. And so I try to be really cognizant of the fact that, you know, I work at 4 a.m. on most Saturdays, because if I have work to do and I don't wake up and do it early, I'm not going to see my kids that day, and I don't want to do that. So I wake up early and I work. I try to be really cognizant of the fact that my associates probably don't want to wake up to 15 emails from me when they wake up on Saturday morning. And so if I can deliver those, right, so that they come in on Monday morning, because there's not a time thing. I don't need to stress them out over the weekend. And so I think as you get a little bit older and you have some folks who are working, you know, with you in that capacity, trying to be aware of both your own sanity in this regard, but also how what you are doing is impacting other members of your team. And I don't know what the associates who work with me would tell you, how good I am at that, but I am trying at least. So those are my kind of 3 thoughts there.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. You know, just the idea of setting that boundary. And then, yeah, I hadn't thought about that before, about making sure that the people you work with, you know, aren't becoming unnecessarily stressed and burdened by your work hours. That delay deliver email send is, I use it all the time. It's amazing. Clayton, what about you?
I think the question was a challenge, right?
Mhm.
I was, yeah. So I think as a practical matter for a new associate, at least, and this may not apply to, you know, other careers within the legal field, was the billable hour. And what I mean by that is not the, you know, bill 2,000 hours a year, 1,800 hours a year. You know, that is what it is. That's work. But the keeping track of your time every 10th of an hour for the rest of your life is kind of daunting. It is tough, and they don't teach you that in law school, at least not at WVU, or at least while I was there. No one teaches you how to bill time. And then especially in the area that I work in, a lot of it's insurance defense. So, you know, you're retained by the insurance company to defend your client. Well, they have entirely different standards for how detailed they be. And then, you know, maybe the next client has they don't care. They're hired you directly, and you can block bill 8 hours a day to them for your legal work. It is, practically speaking, really difficult, and something that they don't really teach you in law school. The other thing is kind of everyone mentions the work-life balance. I have a real problem myself of bringing it home with me. You know, especially during COVID, where you work from home, you never had an opportunity to go to the office, do your work, turn it off, come home. So that was pretty tough. But finding time to, you know, make time for your friends, your family, your kids, whatever the case may be, is really important. If it's, you know, getting a separate phone and leaving that work phone, or just saying, look, after this hour, I'm not going to look at it, or trying to take into account everyone else's schedules, is also something that's really important that I've found. I tend to be a night owl, so it's not uncommon for me to work till 2, 3 in the morning for no other reason than I'm just up working. And you know, you don't think about that it might be super stressful for someone to come in like your secretary first thing in the morning and have 25 emails from you, and they're just short because it's 2 in the morning and you know she's not going to read it. Then it seems like a rush when she gets in first thing in the morning. So I try to take that into consideration as well. Is, you know, in my position as an associate, it's not necessarily the, you know, flowing down to associates and things, but it's flowing down to your paralegals and your support staff. But it's the same concept that Luke was talking about. Super important.
I think too, COVID has really kind of made the work-life balance kind of upended everything. Because on the one hand, now we know people can work from home. You know, when I worked for the state, they thought nobody could possibly do that job from home. And I would think, when I'm in the office, I have 1,000 meetings. If I could just go home and write a brief, that would be great. They would say, oh, nobody can ever do that. And now they're all working from home because COVID made them. And so, you know, it certainly, you know, opened our eyes to the possibilities of remote work. And that certainly has helped, I think, with flexibility. But on the other hand, it also has made people realize we can work from home easily. And so there's, I think, more of an expectation for availability. And so that's when I think it comes in important to set the boundaries. And like Luke mentioned, it's more aspirational for me than it is a hard and fast rule. But certainly it's something that I do think also is kind of like a hot topic in the legal profession right now, is how to achieve that balance or try to get kind of close to it. I keep going to all these webinars about perfectionism and the effect of perfectionism. Lawyers tend to gravitate towards the perfectionism side of the scale, and how that's influencing our work and influencing our mental health, I think, is an important factor as well. So let me go around now and ask you kind of one final 2-part question, and then we'll open it up for questions. What advice would you give to current law students about how to break in and get their foot in the door, get where you are? And then also, what in law school prepared you for where you are now. So I'm going to start with Luke on that one.
I think in terms of getting your foot in the door and getting a job and kind of moving forward, I feel like this is remarkably cliche advice, but it is the only thing that worked for me. You have to work harder than everybody else. I'm not all that bright, but I have the ability to just put my head down and work. And I really think that in my experience, that's what worked for me. That's what helped me get into law school. That's what helped me do well on exams. And so I think that's it. That's what worked for me. So I can't really offer very much other than that. And I think that looks different for other people. And so knowing kind of your strengths and your weaknesses, I think is helpful. My law school roommate, God love him, didn't do anything ever. And then would stay up for 48 hours before exams and do nothing but study and crushed it. And I hated it because I couldn't do that, right? But he could. And he's a successful lawyer. He's got a good career at a white shoe firm. So it's going to be different for everybody. That's what worked for me. In terms of, how does law school prepare? Oh, one other thing. I think the people that you're in law school with right now, you have the potential right now to be beginning your professional network. And no matter what you go into, whether you're an energy lawyer, whether you're a litigator, a corporate attorney, an L&E attorney, whatever, that network is going to be really important for you. And I think Whitney said earlier, there is like an energy law bar, I don't know, and knowing people in that, I think is really helpful. And so to the extent you can get a jump on that while you're in law school and, just keeping it, it's literally nothing other than keeping in touch with your classmates, right? I think that is important. The second part of the question was kind of what does law school prepare you for, right? Before the presentation started, we were having a conversation a little bit along these lines. I think in a lot of ways, law school does not necessarily do a great service to folks who want to go and be practicing attorneys. The one thing I do think law school does, and I think it could do this in a year or maybe a year and a half instead of 3, I think law school gives you the language, right? Law school allows you to sit down in an attorney's office and know what they mean when they say the rules of civil procedure. Hopefully know what they're talking about when they say discovery, and things like that. And I think, again, this really only applies for litigation. I've heard that this isn't even the case for corporate lawyers. But I think it gives you the language, right? Everything else, I think you're going to learn by doing and through no fault of anyone's own other than that's how you have to learn it. You can't really understand how to respond to discovery until you've responded to discovery, how to prepare for oral argument until you've done oral argument and been embarrassed a couple times and realized, oh, I wasn't ready for that. And you have to learn that by doing. Law school does give you the language, so I think it's important to learn that language, be aware of that language, those kind of basic concepts, and that's the major thing that I took out of law school.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and those are kind of the practical pieces that are still with you, where a lot of law school coursework is so theoretical. Let me throw it to you, Whitney.
I think one of the biggest things as far as, getting your foot in the door and starting your career is if you're in a position where you can find a good mentor, or you can find, if you go into a law firm, if you can find a partner who's a little bit ahead of you, or if you go in as a general counsel, or anybody in the industry or anything like that, even if they're not within your kind of base camp of work, if you can find a mentor to help you move yourself along. We had a couple of partners within Bowles Rice that I was able to work under them and learn most of what I know from them. And that's honestly probably what I can attribute the development of my career to the most, is just having those mentors and having them kind of help me along and getting me involved in cases and getting me involved in different things. Working hard, obviously, you're not going to be able to find a good mentor, have anybody, take you under your wing if they don't see that you are a hard worker and they don't see that you're committed to this. So, you have to make yourself an appealing mentee in that regard. But I think if you can find some people who can, help you along and teach you, and you work hard in combination with that, I think that's what I found to be one of the most important things for me in my career. As far as law school goes, I think law school does teach you a different way to think than probably you learn in most situations, a way to think about a problem and examine all sides of it. Um, I think, like Luke said, I think the most of, as far as my actual practice and learning how to practice energy law, has come through working. I've learned most of that in the firm, not so much from law school, but I do think that law school does teach you that unique way that you need to think as an attorney in some regard, and that maybe sometimes you don't realize you use it as much, but I do think that that helps just in the general practice of law.
Absolutely. And, I think that stuff comes back to you later on that you don't realize that you learned in law school. Property law, like you say, being a big example of that. I never would have thought I would get off with property when I was in law school. And then it's like a pretty big basis of what we do.
Yeah, you don't realize, and there will be a couple classes like that. I mean, in this field, property is the big one. Yeah, I still have my property law book, and I will have to go back and reference it sometimes. So I think whatever field you end up in, there will be a couple of key classes probably that you pull from.
I think too, like that kind of practical application makes you understand the subject area a lot more. Like I was not great at property in law school, but then once you see it, like, oh, this is the actual issue my client is having, and this is how it relates to property law, it becomes a lot easier to digest. So I would say, don't worry if you're hearing this and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm terrible at property. And I told somebody the other day, I think I got a C in administrative law, and then that's pretty much what I did for 8 years. So it turned out okay. You understand a lot more when you're in the actual trenches. Clayton, let me ask the same question to you.
Yeah, I was on one of the other sessions, and I said shameless plug for EMLF, and I'll do the same thing here. Being involved with organizations like EMLF, or other energy, environmental related organizations. Some of the topics, you might go to a conference, you're like, what are they talking about? It's way over my head, and I think the benefit of is not necessarily the substance of that conference, because that's more geared towards practicing attorneys in that area, but you get to meet the folks that are in that space. And you start to meet these people, and like Luke was saying earlier, there's kind of this energy bar. Well, once you meet the people in that area, you talk to them, and maybe you develop relationships with them, and that's one way to, I think, get into the energy field from a new person coming out of law school perspective. Similarly, in law school, being involved with the energy program there. So for me at WVU, it was Professor Van Nostrand, Professor Fichet before he left to become a dean, Professor McGinley. These were the folks that taught all the energy and environmental classes. Get to know them because they know people. They can point you in the right direction, introduce you to folks, and things like that. That's kind of what got me involved, and then that's what got me involved in EMLF was just through the law school, talking with professors and saying, hey, here's these scholarship opportunities, here's these conference opportunities, go out, meet people. And then the benefit in Kentucky is they normally do a bourbon tasting or something, so that was always nice as well. As far as law school, everything tends to be, at least in my opinion, theoretical, and you look at these huge Supreme Court cases all the time, and then you go, wow, I'm not most likely going to be arguing in front of the Supreme Court very often. There's people that do, and more power to them, but the reality is most folks aren't going to be doing that. So being a couple years out, some things that I wish I would have focused on in law school is the civil procedure side of things, the practical classes, like I think at WVU there was trial ad and pre-trial, because it gives you, from a litigation perspective, a little bit of a leg up whenever you go into practice to see certain issues, but then so much of it's just firsthand experience. I mean, I still go to, there's a particular partner I work with, one of my mentors, and I go to him pretty much every day or call him or text him, and I'm like, here's this weird procedural issue. What do you think? Those are the practical side of it that I wish I would have focused on more in law school, that I didn't really. I was focusing on bar prep and taking the bar classes. And while that may help you for the bar, Barbary can teach you that in 6 months. Law school can do a better job, I think, of teaching you some of that procedural and practical stuff if you seek it out and don't focus on the bar prep classes so much.
Anna, can I just piggyback on that real quick?
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that last point by Clayton is a really, really good one, in terms of, if you want to be a deal lawyer, take the deal clinics. If you want to be a litigator, take trial advocacy, take pretrial if they offer it. If you want to work in Pennsylvania or West Virginia and your law school offers PA procedure, which if you are in Pennsylvania is weird. And I never took it in law school and I wish I had. So that kind of thing, thinking about what are the classes that actually apply. I mean, I am 11 years out of law school. I've tried a fair number of cases. I have my trial advocacy book behind me and I read it cover to cover before every trial, because it's helpful. And that those are the kinds of things. I mean, Clayton nailed it. Like, Barbary will get you ready for the bar, or Themis or whatever it is. Like, that's going to get you ready for the bar, and you work hard and study and you'll be fine. But don't feel like you need to take a family law course to get ready for the bar. If you have no interest in taking family law, focus on the things you actually want to do. I think that's a really, really good point.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, those practical skills classes are invaluable. I agree with Luke. I have my litigation skills. I have that book behind me on the shelf somewhere. And it had a whole section on objections you might make in a trial. I read that every single time before I had to go to court. My 2 cents would be, kind of what we're talking about with the networking. I mean, create those relationships. The people that are around you in law school, particularly if you're staying in the area, that's going to be your colleagues for the next 1,000,000 years, and you're the judge you're appearing in front of. And to build those relationships and maintain them is so important. Even if that just means, every 6 months you shoot them an email and see how things are going, just keeping that network and adding to it as you gain more professional connections. Really, I always say, I think the most important thing is just the collegiality. Especially with a small bar like the Energy Bar, you're going to see the same people over and over and over again. Sometimes you'll be on the same side, sometimes you'll be opposing each other. But at the end of the day, your job is to zealously represent your client, and you can do that and maintain a strong air of collegiality with your opposing counsel and your colleagues. And I think that's so important. And the only reason I have this job is because of a friend of mine from law school worked with the person who was in charge of the search committee and thought, I know somebody who might be interested in that, and forwarded it along to me. So the connections you're building now are really important for the future. Another thing I would add too is, we talked a lot about our paths to get where we are. And I feel like I always kind of have wandered around from place to place. But, I think there's so many different ways to practice law now, not just in the Energy Bar, but in general, that, used to, I think, be the conventional wisdom that you graduate law school, you go work for a firm, several years later, you make partner, and then eventually, 60 years later, you die at your desk. I don't think that's necessarily the path that everyone has to take now. And certainly, I feel like in law school, that's what they were pushing us into. And if that's not the life for you, if you heard Clayton talk about the billable hour and it made you shudder, there are lots of other ways to practice. And especially now that kind of remote work has exploded and made it more possible to do things. We don't have anybody on this panel, unfortunately, today who's in-house counsel, but there are lots of in-house positions within the energy industry, both as a general counsel role and then overseeing litigation and overseeing safety and labor and employment, and there are lots of different ways to be a part of the energy industry, that we probably haven't necessarily touched on also. So let me go ahead and open it up now. If any of you guys have any questions, you don't have to turn your cameras on. You can if you want. You can put them in the chat or say them out loud. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer them. And while you're thinking, let me also mention again that we do have a number of scholarship opportunities at EMLF. And the big one I want to plug today is the Schetroma Travel Scholarship. We've mentioned a lot about getting your foot in the door and meeting the right people, and that's a great way to kind of start building your energy law network, is to come to EMLF programming, and the Schetroma Fund makes it very easy to do that. Let's see. Oh.
There. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Hi, my name's Karina. I am actually sitting in Pitt right now, Lucas. So I'm coming to you straight from the law school. And I do have a question. Yeah, I'm a 3L this year, and I have kind of found myself very interested in this space. I actually just got out of energy law class right before I jumped into this. And, I'm looking at getting kind of those more hands-on experiences like you guys were saying. And so I'm right now considering like taking a clinic. There's not one specifically for energy, but there is an environmental law one, so pretty close. Is that something that you guys, would recommend? I'm not sure if I can get like some of those more like advocacy or procedural classes in at this point, since this is coming out in my last semester. But what do you guys think of like a clinic?
Absolutely.
So I did a clinic my 2L year, and I did it in immigration law, which is something I didn't really have an interest in doing. But I mean, you took a case and you argued it in front of an ILGA, in front of an immigration law judge. And so as a 2L, I was on my feet making arguments, and obviously well before that, doing all the things we needed to do to prepare our client's case. So I mean, I'm a big advocate of clinics, especially because if you couldn't tell, I'm not a huge advocate of law school classwork. Although if you're taking Professor Abbott's class, he's fantastic. And I worked for Kevin for years, and he really, really knows his stuff. So that's a very obvious exception. But yeah, I mean, clinics are fantastic to be able to get on your feet and just practice law, even if it's not, exactly what you want to do or whatever, to have an understanding of like, oh, I have to file something, and like, how does that actually get filed? Just really basic stuff like that. I mean, yeah, I think clinics are 1,000% worth their weight in gold in law school for sure.
Yeah, I would agree. Even if it's not like I did education law clinic, obviously I don't have anything to do with education law now, but it certainly gave me the not only the foundation litigation wise, but meeting clients and working with clients and hearing their interests and interviewing them and understanding what they need. I think gives you a big step forward.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. I took the Land Use and Sustainable Development Clinic at WVU, which was primarily working with cities and developing comprehensive plans for a host of things under some West Virginia statutes, and then also doing perpetual easements for conservation easements and doing the title work and things like that, which really gets you into the property aspect of it. But it was hugely helpful to me, I think, in like Anna said, meeting clients, and these are actual clients. These aren't just fake people. They're doing actual legal work for actual clients. So what you do has a real life effect on that, and it was super helpful and super important. And then coincidentally, one of the professors is now the career law clerk for one of the magistrate judges in the Northern District. And I have a mediation with them, and we're emailing back and forth. And, it goes back to the who you meet in law school, whether it's your professor or your classmates, to stay in touch. But yeah, definitely do the clinic. They're awesome.
I would say too, you saying Professor Abbott made me think all of you guys have professors at your law school that are involved in EMLF, that know other members of EMLF and that kind of help you find mentors, and please reach out to me. And if you reach out to me and you're like, hey, I'm interested in practicing oil and gas law in West Virginia, I'll be like, well, here's 10 people I can introduce you to. So definitely don't be afraid to reach out to practicing attorneys that are doing what you want to do, and see if they'll have a virtual chat with you or have coffee with you. It certainly is something that, especially litigators, we like to talk. So certainly is something that most attorneys are definitely willing to do, is to help you out, answer any questions you have. Any more questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
I raised my hand. Hi, my name is Latricia. I am a 1L. I go to South Texas College of Law in Houston, Texas. And with me being, the question I have is pretty much, I'm trying to be as proactive as possible. I am a non-traditional student. I'm currently a paralegal, a personal injury paralegal for the past 9 years. So coming into law school, I know that I have an interest in litigation. Like, I do want to do litigation. As far as what type of law, I'm open. Like, I like personal injury, but I don't want to limit myself to what I've been doing for the past 9 years. But the question I mainly have is, it's pretty early in the game, and I haven't taken any of the clinics. I'm nowhere near that phase. I've been told to just focus on my grades, which I have been. I've been trying to go to as much networking and, virtual things and taking names and just getting information. But what should I really be doing at this early in the state, in the game? And if you could just give me some advice on that. I know I do want the litigation track, but I am completely open to all types of, or all facets of law in general.
I think the first thing you said is the most important thing, especially as a 1L, focus on your grades. That's going to be the biggest thing. If you can come out of your 1L year with good grades, employers look at that. I've been on our recruitment committee, obviously, we look at grades. We do. And so to be able to come out with that, and I think you have a leg up having actually worked in the law for the last 9 years. I will tell you, all other things being equal, when we're looking at folks to hire, if we have somebody who's worked in a law firm for 9 years, that's a really, really big leg up for them, because they are going to be able to come in the door on day one and actually know what's happening, right? What a complaint is, what discovery is, what trial is like. Folks who went straight through, like myself, through no fault of their own, they just don't. So I think focusing on your grades is 100% a really good idea. Networking is a really good idea. It sounds to me like you're doing the things you should be doing. So it sounds good to me.
Yeah, I just say focus on your grades and keep an open mind. I kind of did a similar thing when I went to law school. I thought that I wanted to do international law, energy law, criminal law were kind of the areas that I wanted to do, and then kind of by a process of elimination, focused on energy law. I took my 1L criminal law class and said, you know what, that's not for me. And then I had a kind of a practical check that I'm in West Virginia, and there's not a lot of international law going on here. So you kind of just fall into it. I would just say keep an open mind, take as many of the different types of classes, different areas of the law as you can. You get a good intro to that 1L year, forced intro to that, I would say. But yeah, just keep an open mind and, expose yourself to anything you can, and you'll find your niche, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Looks like we're running up on our time here. Does anybody else have any questions, or if our panelists have anything they'd like to add? Well, let me just say thank you all so much, both to our participants and to our panelists today, for for joining us. This is a really great conversation, and I was excited we were able to do it today. So thank you guys so much. And please, if you're a student on this call, make sure you're keeping your eyes on our social media and on emlf.org for opportunities for scholarships and conferences. We're doing right now a virtual series on the petrochemicals industry in Appalachia, which is certainly not something that I know a lot about. And so it's been very interesting for me. This week, we're talking about economic incentives for companies to locate in Appalachia. It's pretty interesting. Next week will be about environmental sustainability, and I think that'll be really interesting as well. So feel free to join us for that. Go to our website, and you can register with the code StudentComp for free for that. And then you can also view any of our on-demand programming as well. Just feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, or if you want to find out how to get more involved. I'm happy to hear from you. And thank you guys so much for participating today. Have a great rest of your day.
Have a good one.